Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the same boring screen he had been staring at for 3 years. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he drank it anyway. Outside the small window of Outpost Delta 7, the empty, black space stretched on forever. No stars, no ships, no anything, just darkness. Delta 7 was the kind of place Earth Command sent people they wanted to forget about. Jake knew this because he used to be somebody important. 3 years ago, he was Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet, commanding real warships with real missions. Then he made the mistake of telling Admiral Hayes that his attack plan was stupid. Hayes did not like being called stupid, even when he was wrong. So here Jake was, stuck on a tiny space station that nobody cared about, watching empty space around a dead planet called Kepler 442c. The planet below was nothing but rocks and dust. No life, no resources, no reason for anyone to come here. That was exactly why Earth Command put an outpost here. If something bad happened to Delta 7, nobody would miss it. The station was home to 12 people, and Jake knew every one of them had their own story of why they ended up here. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was brilliant with machines, but she talked back to officers too much. Sergeant Pete Collins knew more about fixing things than anyone Jake had ever met, but he had a drinking problem that got him in trouble. Communications officer Lisa Park could speak 7 alien languages, but she liked aliens more than humans, which made some people nervous. The rest of the crew were good people too, but they all had something wrong with them according to Earth Command. Maybe they asked too many questions, or they did not follow orders exactly right, or they just had bad luck. Delta 7 was where the military sent people who were useful but troublesome. Jake walked through the narrow hallways of the station. Everything was old and patched up. The walls had scorch marks from electrical fires that happened years ago. The lights flickered sometimes. The air recycling system made weird noises that Pete said were normal, but they still worried Jake. This was not the kind of place that impressed visitors, but then again, they never had visitors. He found Amy in the engine room, covered in grease and muttering words that would make a sailor blush. She was working on something inside a control panel, her small hands moving quickly between wires and circuits. "How are we doing today, Rodriguez?" Jake asked. Amy looked up at him with tired brown eyes. "Same as yesterday, Captain. Everything is falling apart, but I keep fixing it." She wiped her hands on a dirty cloth. "The power generator is making that noise again." Jake listened and heard a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Is it dangerous?" "Not today," Amy said with a shrug. "Maybe not tomorrow either, but if we do not get new parts soon, we might have some real problems." This was an old conversation. Jake had been asking Earth Command for new equipment for 3 years. They always said they would send something when they could, but nothing ever came. Delta 7 was too far away and too unimportant for anyone to worry about. Jake continued his walk and found Pete in the weapons bay, doing maintenance on their defense systems. The plasma cannons looked ancient, like something from a museum. Pete was cleaning one of them with the care of a man working on his favorite car. "Morning, Captain," Pete said without looking up. His voice was rough from too many years of smoking and drinking. "Just keeping our pea shooters clean." "Think they would work if we needed them?" Jake asked. Pete laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "These old things? They might shoot something, or they might blow up in our faces. Hard to say." He patted the cannon like it was an old friend. "But do not worry, Captain, nobody ever comes out here anyway." That was true. In 3 years, Jake had seen exactly 0 enemy ships, 0 friendly ships, and 0 anything else that was not a piece of space junk. Delta 7 was the most boring assignment in the entire galaxy. Jake made his way to the communications room, where Lisa Park sat surrounded by screens showing nothing but static and empty space. She was young, maybe 25, with black hair and the kind of intense focus that made people think she was angry when she was just thinking hard. "Anything interesting today, Park?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "Same as always, Captain. Empty space in all directions, no ships, no signals, no nothing." She paused and looked at him. "Sometimes I wonder if Earth Command even remembers we are out here." Jake wondered the same thing. They sent reports back to Earth every week, but they never got replies. Their supply ships came every 6 months, bringing food and basic equipment, but the pilots never stayed long enough to chat. It was like Delta 7 existed in its own little bubble, forgotten by the rest of humanity. "Well, keep watching," Jake told her. "Somebody has to." He returned to his office and sat down at his desk. The daily reports were the same as always: power levels normal, life support working, crew healthy, nothing to report. He had written the same words so many times that his fingers moved automatically across the keyboard. Jake looked out his window again at the empty darkness. Sometimes he wondered what would happen if something actually did show up out there. Would their old weapons work? Would their patched-up systems hold together? Would 12 forgotten people on a forgotten station be able to handle a real threat? He hoped they would never have to find out. But deep in space, 3 large ships had just entered the edge of the system, their sensors locked onto the small station orbiting the dead planet. The ships were bigger than anything humanity had ever built, and they were coming fast. Admiral Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, and watched the small human station grow larger on his main screen. His 6 eyes studied the pathetic structure with the cold interest of a predator watching wounded prey. The station looked like something built from spare parts and held together with hope. Vexthor was a member of the Kethvar race, beings that looked like a cross between insects and reptiles. His people had been conquering other worlds for over 200 years. They were very good at it. The secret was simple: find the weakest point in an enemy's defenses, attack it with overwhelming force, and let fear do the rest of the work. "Report," Vexthor commanded in his harsh, clicking voice. His tactical officer, a younger Kethvar named Zethak, bent over his console. "The human station shows minimal energy output, Admiral. Our sensors detect only basic life support and communications systems. Weapons appear to be old plasma cannons, probably 50 years out of date." Vexthor made a sound that might have been laughter in his throat. "How many humans aboard?" 12 life signs, Admiral. No more. 12 humans on a single, small station, armed with ancient weapons. This would not even qualify as target practice. Vexthor had destroyed entire planets that put up more resistance than this pathetic outpost would manage. The Admiral looked at his fleet through the bridge windows. 3 massive dreadnoughts, each one longer than the human station was wide. The Destroyer of Worlds was the largest, carrying enough firepower to turn a moon into dust. The other 2 ships, Death's Hand and Final Judgment, were slightly smaller, but still capable of eliminating any human vessel ever built. Each ship carried a crew of over 3,000 Kethvar warriors. Their hulls were made of materials that could survive direct hits from nuclear weapons. Their shields could deflect energy beams that would melt normal metals in seconds. Their weapons had reduced proud civilizations to burning ruins. "What do we know about this system?" Vexthor asked. Zethak checked his data files. "System designation Kepler 442. 1 dead planet, no resources of value. The humans call their outpost Delta 7. Intelligence reports suggest it is used as a punishment assignment for soldiers who have disappointed their commanders." This made sense to Vexthor. Every military had places where they sent failures and troublemakers. The humans were no different. This station was clearly a dumping ground for their unwanted personnel. "Perfect," the Admiral said. "We will broadcast the destruction across human space. When they see how easily we destroy even their military outposts, they will understand that resistance is pointless." The Kethvar had used this strategy successfully against 4 other species. Show them how helpless they are by destroying something they think is protected, then offer them a choice: surrender completely, or watch their worlds burn one by one. Most species chose surrender after seeing what Kethvar weapons could do. Vexthor had studied human military reports stolen by Kethvar spies. Humans were emotional creatures who valued individual lives more than military objectives. When they saw 12 of their own soldiers die for no reason, it would break their will to fight. Fear was always more effective than actual warfare. "Begin. Approach," Vexthor ordered. "Battle formation." The three dreadnoughts moved into an attack pattern that had been perfected over decades of conquest. Destroyer of Worlds took the center position, with Death's Hand and Final Judgment flanking it on either side, their weapons powered up with the deep hum of energy being channeled into devastating systems. On the human station, alarms began to sound. Lisa Park looked at her sensor readings and felt her blood turn cold. 3 massive ships were approaching, from deep space bigger than anything in the Earth Fleet database. Their energy signatures were completely unknown, but their intent was clear from their formation. "Captain Morrison to the bridge," she called over the intercom, trying to keep her voice steady. "Emergency contact." Jake arrived in less than a minute, still pulling on his jacket. "What do we have, Park?" 3 unknown vessels approaching. "Captain, big ones. Really big." Lisa's fingers flew over her controls, gathering as much data as she could. No response to our hail. They are not transmitting identification codes. Jake looked at the main screen and felt his stomach drop. The ships were enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest human warship. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb. Light and energy readings showed weapon systems that made Delta 7's plasma cannons look like toy guns. "Time to intercept?" Jake asked. 18 minutes at their current speed, Lisa replied. Jake hit the general alarm button. Throughout the station, red lights began flashing and a warning tone echoed through the corridors. The crew of Delta 7 dropped whatever they were doing and ran to their battle stations. Amy Rodriguez arrived first, her face streaked with grease from whatever engine part she had been fixing. "What is the situation, Captain?" 3 hostile ships. Inbound, Jake said. "Big ones. Can our weapons handle something that size?" Amy looked at the sensor data and shook her head slowly. "Our plasma cannons might scratch their paint if we are lucky. Those things are built like flying fortresses." Pete Collins stumbled onto the bridge, still half asleep from his afternoon nap. He took one look at the screen and let out a long whistle. "Well, that is not good." Jake tried to contact Earth Command, but the nearest fleet was 6 days away. Even if they sent help immediately, it would arrive long after Delta 7 was nothing but floating debris. On the lead Kethvar ship, Admiral Vexthor watched the human station's pathetic attempt to power up its weapons. The plasma cannons were so old that their energy signatures barely registered on his sensors. "Shall we begin the attack, Admiral?" Zethak asked. Vexthor considered the question. The humans were trying to look brave, but it was obviously an act. 12 people on a broken-down station could not hope to stop 3 dreadnoughts. Still, he admired their courage even if it was pointless. "Let them sweat for a few more minutes," Vexthor said. "Fear makes the lesson more effective." Neither the Admiral nor Captain Morrison knew that this battle would change everything both sides thought they knew about warfare. Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the bridge and looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were not running. Amy was checking weapon systems that everyone knew were useless. Pete was muttering about power distribution while his hands moved over controls with practiced skill. Lisa was trying to jam enemy communications even though her equipment was supposedly too old to work properly. These people had been thrown away by Earth Command, but they were still trying to fight 3 massive warships with weapons that belonged in a museum. Jake felt proud of them, even though they were all probably going to die in the next few minutes. "Captain," Amy said, looking up from her console, "I need to tell you something about our weapons." "What about them?" Jake asked. Amy glanced around at the other crew members, then back at Jake. "They are not really plasma cannons." Jake stared at her. "What do you mean they are not really plasma cannons?" "I mean they look like plasma cannons, but they are actually something else entirely." Amy took a deep breath. "Captain, how much do you know about Project Lighthouse?" The name hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Project Lighthouse was one of Earth's most secret military programs. He had heard rumors about it when he was still in the regular fleet, whispers about new weapons that could change everything, but those were just rumors. "Amy, what are you talking about?" "Captain, this station is not really a punishment assignment," Amy said. "It is a testing ground for experimental weapons. The plasma cannons are actually antimatter pulse generators. I have been modifying them for 3 years. Jake felt the world shift around him. That is impossible. If we had antimatter weapons, why would they look like old plasma cannons? Pete Collins cleared his throat. Because nobody looks twice at a broken-down outpost with ancient weapons, Captain. But they might pay attention to a station with experimental antimatter technology. Lisa Park turned around in her chair. Captain, those alien language programs I run, they are not just for fun. I have been studying captured alien technology for Earth intelligence. That old communications array is actually a quantum encryption system that can hack into most alien computer networks. Jake sat down heavily in his command chair. His head was spinning. Are you telling me that this entire station is fake? Not fake, Amy said. Just not what it appears to be. The reactor that keeps making weird noises? It is not an old fusion generator, it is a zero-point energy system that produces more power than most Earth battleships. Pete has been modifying it to run at triple normal output. Pete nodded. The whole station is designed to look like it is falling apart, Captain. But underneath all the rust and patch jobs, we have technology that would make Earth Command wet their pants if they knew what we really had out here. But why? Jake asked. Why put all this advanced technology on a station nobody cares about? Because nobody cares about it, Lisa said. Think about it, Captain. If you wanted to test new weapons without anyone noticing, where would you put them? On a big, important base where everyone would see them? Or on a forgotten outpost that nobody ever visits? Jake thought about the supply ships that came every 6 months. The pilots never stayed long, never looked around, never asked questions. They just dropped off basic supplies and left. If someone was secretly delivering advanced technology at the same time, nobody would know. The crew, Jake said slowly. Are we all part of this? Amy nodded. Every person on this station was chosen for specific skills, Captain. We were not sent here as punishment. We were recruited for a secret mission. But they could not tell us the truth until we proved we could be trusted. And you decided I could be trusted now because 3 alien warships are about to attack us? That was always the plan, Pete said. If this station ever came under attack, we were supposed to reveal our true capabilities and defend ourselves. The whole point was to create a hidden defensive position that enemies would underestimate. Jake looked at the main screen, where the 3 Kethvar dreadnoughts were getting closer. So what you are telling me is that our broken-down weapons can actually fight those things? Captain, Amy said with the first smile Jake had seen from her in months, our weapons can do a lot more than fight them. Lisa turned back to her console. I am already inside their communication system, Captain. Their encryption is good but not good enough. I can feed them false information, mess with their targeting computers, maybe even cause some of their systems to malfunction. Pete cracked his knuckles. And I have been saving up 3 years' worth of modifications for a day like this. Captain, we have enough firepower hidden in this station to take on a small fleet. Jake felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Hope. Not just hope, but excitement. All this time he had thought he was commanding a group of failures on a worthless assignment. Instead, he had been given some of Earth's best people and most advanced technology, disguised to look like the opposite. How do we do this? Jake asked. Amy was already moving toward the weapon controls. First, I bring the real defensive systems online. The Kethvar are expecting to see weak shields and pathetic weapons. Instead, they are going to run into barriers that can stop battleship-grade attacks and weapons that can punch through their armor like paper. Pete headed for the engineering section. I will reroute power from all non-essential systems to weapons and shields. Captain, in about 5 minutes this station is going to be producing more energy than anything the Kethvar have ever seen. Lisa's fingers flew over her keyboard. And I will make sure they cannot coordinate their attack or call for help. By the time I am done with their computers, they will be shooting at shadows and sending status reports to nobody. Jake looked at his crew with new eyes. They were not failures or misfits. They were specialists, experts in their fields, chosen for a mission that required the best Earth had to offer. The drinking, the attitude problems, the personality conflicts. It was all cover, a way to make sure nobody suspected the truth. All, right? Jake said. standing up straight for the first time in 3 years. Let us show these aliens what Earth's weakest outpost can really do. On his screen, the HFY ships moved into attack formation, confident they were about to destroy. A helpless target, Admiral Vexthor had no idea he was about to face the most dangerous weapons humanity had ever created, operated by some of the best soldiers Earth had ever trained. The battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the aliens appeared, Jake Morrison was not worried about losing. Admiral Vexthor watched the small human station on his main screen and felt the satisfaction of a hunter about to make an easy kill. His 3 dreadnoughts were in perfect attack formation. The humans had not even tried to run away, which meant they were either very brave or very stupid. In Vexthor's experience, there was usually no difference between the two. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his tactical officer Zethak announced. "Begin the attack," Vexthor commanded. "Show these humans what happens when they stand against the HFY Empire." The time was exactly 14:23 according to the station's clocks. The 3 dreadnoughts opened fire at the same moment, sending massive energy beams toward the tiny outpost. Each beam carried enough power to vaporize a city block in seconds. Vexthor expected to see the human station disappear in a flash of light and debris. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy beams hit the station and simply stopped. Blue shields flared around Delta 7, absorbing the attack without even flickering. The station sat there undamaged, as if 3 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy had just thrown pebbles at it. "What?" Vexthor snarled. "That is not possible. Scan their shields again." On Delta 7, Jake Morrison felt the station shake, slightly as the alien weapons hit their defensive barriers. Amy Rodriguez was at the weapon controls, her hands moving over switches and buttons that had been hidden under fake panels for 3 years. "Shields holding at 98%, Amy reported. "Those big ugly ships hit about as hard as a strong wind." Pete Collins was in the engineering section, watching power readings climb to levels that would have terrified him if he did not know what the station could really handle. "All systems green, Captain. The 0-point generator is barely working." Lisa Park was hunched over her communications console, her fingers dancing across a keyboard as she invaded the HFY computer systems. "I am inside their network, Captain. They are very confused right now." Jake looked at the main screen where the 3 alien ships were hanging in space like they could not believe what had just happened. "Amy, show them what real weapons look like." Amy smiled and pressed a series of buttons. "With pleasure, Captain." Sections of Delta 7's hull began to retract, revealing weapon arrays that had been hidden for 3 years. What the HFY had thought were old plasma cannons were actually antimatter pulse generators, and they were now fully charged and ready to fire. The first volley lit up space, like a miniature sun. Antimatter beams lashed out from the station, moving faster than the HFY sensors could track. The beams hit the lead dreadnought, destroyer of worlds, and punched through its shields like they were made of paper. Admiral Vexthor watched in horror as sections of his flagship's hull simply ceased to exist. The antimatter beams did not just damage his ship, they deleted parts of it from reality. Armor that had withstood nuclear weapons vanished. Systems that had never failed began shutting down. "Return fire," Vexthor screamed. "All weapons, maximum power." But Pete Collins had activated his special project. Hidden tractor beam arrays grabbed the destroyer of worlds and held it in place like a giant invisible hand. The HFY ship tried to move, but it was locked in position while Delta 7's weapons systematically tore it apart. "Sir, we cannot break free," Zethak reported, his voice cracking with panic. "The tractor beams are stronger than our engines." Amy targeted the dreadnought's weapon systems first. Antimatter pulses destroyed gun after gun, leaving the massive ship helpless to fight back. Then she started on the engines, the life support, the command center. Each shot removed another piece of the destroyer of worlds until it looked like a half-eaten meal. At the same time, Lisa Park was working her magic on the other 2 ships. She sent false targeting data to Death's Hand, making its computers think Delta 7 was in a completely different location. When the ship fired its main cannon at empty space, Lisa redirected the targeting system to lock onto Final Judgment instead. The second dreadnought's massive weapon fired at its own ally. Final Judgment's shields flared and failed under the unexpected attack from its sister ship. The crew of Death's Hand screamed warnings and tried to regain control of their weapons. But Lisa was faster than their technicians. She introduced feedback loops into Death's Hand's power systems. The ship's reactor began overloading as energy flowed backward through circuits that were never designed to handle reverse current. Warning lights flashed throughout the dreadnought as systems began failing one by one. "Captain, their second ship is about to have a very bad day," Lisa reported. She was right. Death's Hand's reactor reached critical levels and exploded, tearing the massive warship apart from the inside. The explosion was so bright that it briefly outshone the distant sun. Meanwhile, Amy had finished with the Destroyer of Worlds. The flagship of the Kethvar fleet was now nothing but floating debris and emergency pods. Admiral Vexthor was somewhere in that wreckage, if he was still alive at all. That left Final Judgment, the third dreadnought, alone against a human outpost that had just destroyed two ships much larger than itself. The Kethvar captain tried to run, turning his ship away from Delta 7 and firing his engines at maximum power. "Oh no, you do not," Pete muttered from engineering. He activated the station's modified engines, creating a gravity well that grabbed the fleeing ship like quicksand. Final Judgment's engines screamed as they fought against artificial gravity, but they could not break free. Amy took her time with the last ship. She targeted its engines first, stranding it in space. Then she destroyed its weapons, leaving it defenseless. Finally, she began taking apart its hull piece by piece like someone slowly peeling an apple. The Kethvar crew sent desperate messages begging for mercy, but none of the humans on Delta 7 spoke their language well enough to understand. Lisa could have translated, but she was too busy making sure no distress signals reached other Kethvar forces. At exactly 14:30, 7 minutes after the attack began, Final Judgment broke apart under concentrated antimatter fire. The last piece of the Kethvar fleet became another cloud of debris floating in the darkness of space. Jake looked at the tactical display, where 3 red contacts had been replaced by scattered debris fields. The most feared fleet in Kethvar. History had been completely destroyed by a single human outpost in exactly 7 minutes. "Well," Pete said over the intercom, "that was fun. Can we do it again?" Jake Morrison floated in the command chair of Delta 7 and stared at the debris fields that had once been 3 of the most dangerous warships in the galaxy. Pieces of Kethvar metal drifted past the station's windows like confetti after a parade. It was hard to believe that just 7 minutes ago, those ships had seemed unstoppable. "Status report," Jake said, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her weapons console, where she was running diagnostics on the antimatter pulse generators. "All weapons operating normally, Captain. We used about 30% of our antimatter reserves. Should be enough left over to handle a small invasion fleet if anyone else wants to try their luck." Pete Collins called in from engineering. "Power. Systems are running smooth as silk, Captain. The 0-point generator did not even break a sweat. I could probably power half the Earth fleet with this thing if I had the right connections." Lisa Park was monitoring dozens of communication channels, listening to the galaxy react to what had just happened. "Captain, you need to hear this. I am picking up Kethvar emergency signals from all over their empire. They are asking what happened to Admiral Vexthor's fleet." Jake walked over to Lisa's station. "What are they saying?" "They keep asking for status reports from the 3 dreadnoughts. No one can believe the ships just disappeared. Some of them think it was a trap with hidden human battleships. Others think there was some kind of technical failure. None of them suspect the truth." Jake almost smiled. The truth was that a single human outpost, staffed by 12 people the regular military considered failures, had just accomplished what entire Earth fleets had never attempted. They had not just defeated a Kethvar attack force, they had erased it from existence in 7 minutes. "Amy, start analyzing that wreckage," Jake ordered. "I want to know everything about their technology, their weapons, their weak points. If this was just a scouting force, more ships might be coming." Amy nodded and began deploying scanning drones. "Already on it, Captain. Their hull materials are interesting, very strong against conventional weapons, but antimatter goes through them like they are made of cardboard." Over the next several hours, the crew of Delta 7 worked to clean up the battlefield and gather intelligence. Pete used the station's tractor beams to collect useful pieces of alien technology. Lisa intercepted more communications from confused HFY forces throughout their empire. Amy studied the wreckage and began understanding how HFY ships were built, but the most important work was happening in Jake's office, where he was writing his after-action report. This was the document that would tell Earth Command what had happened at Delta 7, and Jake was trying to decide how much of the truth to include. He could write the full story, how their supposedly weak outpost had revealed experimental weapons and destroyed 3 enemy dreadnoughts in 7 minutes. But that would expose Project Lighthouse and probably get them all transferred to different assignments. Or he could write something simpler and let Earth Command draw their own conclusions. Jake decided on the simple approach. His final report read, 3 unknown hostile vessels approached Delta 7 at 14:16 station time. Vessels opened fire without provocation at 14:23. Station defensive systems responded as designed. All 3 hostile vessels destroyed by 14:30. No casualties among station crew. Debris analysis ongoing. Station operational and ready for further orders. Requesting standard maintenance supplies for minor equipment wear. He sent the report through normal channels and waited. 3 days later, he received a reply that made him laugh out loud. Earth Command had responded, "Good work, Delta 7. Glad to see your training exercises are paying off. Continue current mission." Training exercises. Earth Command thought they had been running simulations, but other people in the galaxy were paying much closer attention. Within a week, Lisa was intercepting messages from a dozen different alien species, all talking about the mysterious destruction of 3 HFY dreadnoughts. Most aliens knew that HFY ships were nearly indestructible, so their complete annihilation was big news. Some species thought the HFY had encountered a new type of human superweapon. Others believed Earth had hidden a massive fleet in the Kepler 442 system. A few suspected that humans had made allies with an advanced alien race and were getting help with their technology. None of them guessed the truth. That 12 humans, on a single small station, had outsmarted and outfought the HFY using nothing but creativity, preparation, and weapons that looked like junk. The rumors spread faster than radio signals. Within a month, Jake was intercepting communications from species he had never heard of, all discussing whether they should reconsider their opinions about human military capability. If Earth's weakest outpost could destroy 3 dreadnoughts, what could their real warships accomplish? The HFY Empire was having its own crisis. They had lost not just 3 ships, but their reputation for invincibility. Other alien species that had been afraid to resist HFY expansion were suddenly asking questions. If humans could fight back successfully, maybe they could too. Emperor Thekvar himself called for an investigation into the disaster. His military leaders had no explanations to offer. 3 of their best ships had simply vanished while attacking what should have been a helpless target. The only evidence was a debris field and some very confused reports from HFY forces throughout the Empire. Some HFY generals wanted to send a larger fleet to destroy Delta 7 and restore their reputation. Others argued that humans clearly had hidden weapons and that attacking them again would be suicide. The debate raged for months while the Empire's enemies grew bolder. Meanwhile, life on Delta 7 returned to normal. Jake filed his daily reports full of nothing happening. Amy went back to maintaining weapons that looked broken but could destroy battleships. Pete continued complaining about equipment that was actually more advanced than anything in the Earth fleet. Lisa kept monitoring empty space that was not really empty anymore, but now they did their jobs with quiet satisfaction. When the galaxy's predators had come hunting, they had found something unexpected. Earth's weakest outpost had proven that humans did not need the biggest ships or the most soldiers to win. They just needed good people, smart planning, and the willingness to hit back harder than anyone expected. The crew of Delta 7 had sent a message to the galaxy without meaning to. Underestimate humans at your own risk. Earth might look weak from the outside, but sometimes the most dangerous weapons were the ones nobody saw coming. Jake looked out his office window at the peaceful darkness of space and wondered how many other weak human outposts were really hidden fortresses waiting for their chance to surprise an enemy. He hoped the galaxy would never find out, but he was ready if it did.